Okay, so this is an introduction to the online calculator. The first thing you see in the top up here is your screen editor. Okay, so you have, this is where you type in your equations. Over here, you have some operations. You have your division sign and all of that, and then you have squares, absolute value, all that stuff. And then here is is your table and how you graph it. Okay, and what you'll see here is what's in the graphing window. So the first thing we can do is go ahead and type in an equation. Let's say I want to write the linear parent function. So it's y equals x, so I don't need to put the y equals part here. That's already there. So what I'm going to do is just type in x, so the other side of the equation. And then I'm going to go to the next one, and let's say I wanted to type in x plus 2. So I want to compare these two to see what's going to happen. So I'm going to type in x plus 2, and if I wanted to get x plus 2 from over here, I could do that as well. So x and then plus 2. But you don't have any numbers on this calculator, so you have to type them in from your keyboard. Okay, so then we hit graph. So this is the first function. The red one is the y equals x, and then the green one is the y equals x plus 2. And what you can do is, let's say you don't like that color. Well, you can change it. So let's change it to red and pink, or red and purple, okay? I can do that. Now, you can see that x plus 2 is highlighted. So when I look at the table over here, all the values that it's given me are actually for y equals x plus 2. If I want to see the table values for y equals x, then I need to go back and click the first y1, right? The first equation. And so now I can see the actual table values for the first equation that I typed in, okay? All right, let's type in one that's a little more complicated. So let's see, and you guys can do this with me. So let's say I have x, so I can go over here and get my x. Oop, I have 2, let me erase that. Okay, so I can go here and get my first x. And this time I want to type in x squared. So how would I type in x squared? I'm going to use the rooftop. So we call this a little caret. And then I can type in 2. Or I can actually just hit x squared if it's a squared function. Okay, and then I'm going to come down here. And let's say I want to type in, let's say x plus 2 and then square it, right? Then I'm going to type in brackets x plus 2 because that's what I want to square, and then I'm going to come over here and grab the squared. And so I'm going to hit graph in order to show me what both of those will do. Okay, so first it's going to graph the y equals x squared in red, and then it's going to graph the x plus 2 squared in pink or purple, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so let's say I wanted to graph x squared. So I come over here and hit my x squared, and then let's say I want to do minus 3. X squared minus 3. So then I'm going to hit graph again. So that's going to type a third function. So it graphs all the first two, and then now I have a third one down here. Okay, so I can graph up to 4 functions using this window. Okay, the next one that we may have to type in is absolute value. So the absolute value for this one is a little different. It's similar to the TI-84, but it actually doesn't show up as the 2 bars with the absolute value. So I'm going to go ahead and clear everything I have in my editor. So let's just clear all of that out. So we'll start clean. And so if I want to erase what's on the screen, then I just clear everything and then hit graph. So this time I'm going to type the absolute value. So I have 2 options. I can type in absolute value, open parentheses. So what's in the brackets is what I want to take the absolute value of. And in this case, it's x. And so on the second one, let's do something a little more complicated. And instead of typing ABS this time, sorry, I started that. I'm going to go over here and use this. It does the same thing. So whether you want to just type ABS every time, or whether you want to hit the button ABS. And this time I'm going to take the absolute value of x minus 3, and then I'm going to add 2. So what that's going to do is going to take the absolute value of x minus 3 and then add 2, and that's how I get the numbers for my function. So I'm going to hit graph to graph both of these functions, and then we can see that one's going to change. So we start out with the parent function in red, and then the absolute value of x minus 3 plus 2 is actually the pink function. All right, let's do an exponential just to make sure we understand how to type in everything. So I'm going to erase all of this and hit graph so that I can clear out everything. And you don't have to hit You don't have to clear out everything every time. It's just for demonstration purposes. So I'm not typing in an exponential and you see a quadratic on the screen. Okay, so now I'm going to type in, let's try an exponential. So we'll type 3, and then we want that raised to the power of x. And then on the next one, let's try 3 raised to the power of x. And then let's try minus 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph these. So we can see there's the first one, and then the second one has been shifted down. And let's try to graph one where we have 3 raised to the power of x minus 2 in brackets, and let's see how that one's going to change. So this time it's 3 raised to the power of x minus 2. So the x minus 2 is in brackets, so all of that is the exponent in this case. So let's see what happens with that one. So they're the first two, and then the next one, it actually slides over. So we can see what's going on with the graphs. Okay, any questions? All right, let's look at one more thing. I want to talk about how to change the window in the online graphing calculator. Well, the window, a simple way to do it is to just use zoom in and zoom out. So if you wanted to go out to 20 by 20, or negative 20 to 20, or if you wanted to go in all the way to negative 5 to 5. So these are just kind of like your standard windows. But if you want to not have a standard window, let's say you want to only look at the domain and range of a certain point. So for instance, remember we learned domain and range, the egg is from left to right, so you're going to enter it from left to right. So let's say that I wanted to say from negative 4 and all the way to 4. So my domain is from negative 4 to 4. And let's say that the tick mark, so that's these little marks here, I want to do increments of 2. I don't want to show every mark. But then let's say on the range, I wanted to start at, let's say, negative 3. And then I wanted my graph or my axes to show up to maybe 6 or something like that. And then I can leave this as 1 every tick mark. So on one axis, you can see that, well, it'll go double. It'll go by multiples of 2, and on the other, it'll go by multiples of 1. Now the table settings, that just tells me the point that I want my table to start at. So let's say that, oh, well, I only want to look at really table values from negative 2 on. Okay, so I can skip every other 2 starting with the number negative 2, or I can go in increments of 1. So now what I'm going to do is hit graph. So what I can see is that it zoomed in closer, and now I can see what's going on with my axes. Or I can see what's going on with my function around the origin or the domain and range that I set. Okay, so knowing the domain and range helps you adjust that window. So this graph goes from negative 4 to 4, just like it does here. And then this one goes from negative 3, so from bottom to 6. To the top, it goes to 6, just like our range. And then we can see our table values start at negative 2 and go on. I think we get about 10 values. So if you wanted to see anything beyond that, then you would just change the start value in the table. Okay, any questions? All right, and anytime I want to go back to the standard 10 by 10 window, then I would just go to standard window and then hit graph, and it takes me back to from negative 10 to 10 for each axis. All right, I hope that's been helpful. So go ahead and pull out the worksheet, and then you can start answering the questions. One other thing is, if you're using the online graphing calculator, it may be helpful to make your windows smaller so that you can put them side by side. So I'll put the graphing calculator on the left side and then maybe OneNote on the right side, so that I can write and not have to go back and forth between them all the time. So that'll help with that. All right.